Good afternoon. My name is Jennifer Manning. I'm the Senior Vice President of Global Strategic Partnerships at Center for Breakthrough Medicines. We have us today an expert panel who will be discussing commercial opportunities for life science real estate in Philadelphia and the surrounding environs. The panel is going to explore a number of the leading life science commercial development projects in the city center, outer city limits, and the suburban market. Our fantastic panelists are each going to provide an update on their unique development project, what differentiates it from others, and what makes it uniquely positioned. They're going to share with us key considerations that go into their decision making. They're going to discuss how they tackle challenges and what unique and exciting opportunities they are facing in the future. So let's move on to our panel. What I'd like to do is have everyone introduce themselves, please.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thrilled to be here and thrilled to see everybody in person. My name is Nelson Way. I'm the Director of Leasing and Development with Ensemble Real Estate Investments down at the Philadelphia Navy Yard.
I'm Jamie Rash. I'm with Keystone. I'm the Regional Director. We're a private equity real estate developer, about 10 million square feet of assets kind of up and down the East Coast. And I manage our downtown portfolio, which is about 2.5 million square feet, right around the Independence Hall area. Includes the I call our crown jewel, like Curtis Center building, which was mentioned a little earlier.
Good afternoon, everybody. John Grady with Wexford Science and Technology. I lead our work in the northeast part of the country. We are a national private developer of knowledge communities. We have about 7 or 8 million square feet of space that we've developed in 12 states. And are active and have been active in Philadelphia for the last 15 years as the developers of U-City Square in University City. Great to be here.
Hello, it's Joe Corcoran. I'm with Discovery Labs and MLP Ventures. We're based in King of Prussia. 3 or 4 years ago, we acquired the former GSK million square foot, 200 acre research and development campus, along with 18 buildings across the street. We have a 2 million square foot life science portfolio there, and we've designed buildings to expand it to approximately 5 million feet, and we're also excited to be here.
Hi, I'm not George Skillen with Spark Therapeutics. I'm Eric Hacker with Spark Therapeutics. George was called away for a family emergency, and I'm filling in for him. So I'll be representing Spark, and we are very excited to be building in the city and really developing a campus in the 30th Street area, and happy to talk about that.
I'm Lou Casa. I'm the president of the Pennsylvania Biotechnology Center, and we also manage with our partners, Brandywine Realty Trust, B Labs at the Sierra Center.
I'm Anthony Mayer, president and partner at University Place Associates. We are the next building up in University City, Philadelphia. We're developing a 250,000 square foot life science LEED and WELL Platinum building. We're about 6 months away, so exciting time when you guys drive by 41st and Market. We're building out a campus of 1 million square feet. A couple years ago when you're on the panel, you hear that we're on the fragmented end of University City, or the book end. But since then, you see we're between Wexford and a lot of what's happening down the street, whether it's the Community College of Pennsylvania or Philadelphia, the Provident Building, which has a great anchor institution tenant in CHOP. And we're in the center of this 4-block radius of an amazing residential boom happening in University City. So thrilled to be here.
Thank you to all of our panelists for joining us today. Let's just go ahead and get started with the first question. There's really no question that the life science development opportunities in our area are continuing to grow at an exponential rate. If each of you could please provide an update on your project, what differentiates it from others, and what makes it uniquely positioned. Eric, we can start with you.
Yeah, sure. So our big project, which I talked about earlier, is a new manufacturing facility, primarily manufacturing facility. I'm the manufacturing head, so that's all I think about, right? It's actually going to be our corporate headquarters. It'll have QC labs, and a significant portion of the building will be manufacturing. It's at 38th and Chestnut, currently a parking lot, Drexel's F lot. And my understanding is fencing is going up this week, so we will actually start to see some work there, and hoping to break ground by the end of the year. It's going to be a 600,000 square foot facility And as I mentioned in the previous talk, over $500 million invested in City of Philadelphia.
That is incredibly impressive, and I look forward to seeing this development come to fruition. Joe?
Thank you, Jen. So I've been told that I have 2 minutes to answer this. So that's the biggest challenge of my day. But I'm going to stick to that. The update on our project is that 2.5 years ago, we acquired essentially an empty 1 million square foot, incredible research and development campus on 200 acres in King of Prussia, but I call it Concha Prussia because it's in between King of Prussia and Conshohocken. And I'm happy to say the update today is it's 100% leased. In addition, more specifically, we were so honored to sign what the University of Pennsylvania called a foundational lease with Dr. Jim Wilson's gene therapy program. And I see Tom Piambino from IPS in the audience. He and I got to know each other extremely well, designing those intricate labs that we wove into and weaved into the former GSK R&D labs. And we're very excited that phase 1 of those labs have moved in, and phase 2 will move in at the end of the year. They take a couple of buildings on the 12-building campus. The next biggest news for us there was, and I got to give Brian O'Neill, who's an amazing entrepreneur and visionary, he saw and created Discovery Labs because he saw the need for tremendous capacity shortfalls on advancing therapies and how crucial it was to saving lives. And he got on board big time. And in addition to creating capacity in real estate, he created a CDMO called Center for Breakthrough Medicines. The update there in our project is the Center for Breakthrough Medicines successfully raised $350 million last December from SK Holdings in South Korea. They're 350 employees strong, headed by Jorg Algrim. They have 700,000 square feet in our 2 million square foot campus. We integrate with them on the real estate side for customers' needs. It's an incredible offering and experience. And the only other update I have to offer is that on our 300 acres, we've laid out another 3 million square feet, and we're finalizing our approvals this year.
Thank you, Joe.
Welcome.
John?
Thanks. When I think about UCity Square, you know, the area in University City from 34th Street to 38th, 39th, I think the differentiator there is it is the heart of our entire innovation ecosystem. It's the institutional heart, it's the commercial heart, it's connected by transit, it's dense, it's walkable. Wexford's been developing in UCity for 15 or 16 years now. We've developed over 1.5 million square feet of academic space, lab space, clinical space. And we're finishing up a phase of about 1.2 million square feet with 460 units of apartments, a new medical school and nursing school and biosciences school for Drexel, and 400,000 square feet of lab office space that we started on spec way back in December of 2019 before COVID kind of showed up. So I think what's really different about UCity Square is the fact that it's an existing community. We're not planning things, we're not hoping things, we're not projecting things. It's where science and innovation and commercialization and talent happens every day in our marketplace. I think, and as we deliver One UCity, you know, I think we're being rewarded for getting ahead of the curve, for starting a building on spec. We'll announce soon that we're 95% leased before we open that building. We've acquired another building in the district, and we'll be putting some lab spaces in that. We're starting construction on another building. So I think this idea of moving from a discussion about individual projects and buildings and into kind of phases as the market starts to develop and deliver in a more regular way over time. Anthony mentioned UPA coming online in a couple months with another 250,000 square feet. I think that what's different in University City now is we are going to have a smoother supply curve so that we can absorb space more smoothly, and so that when companies need it, it's there. I think traditionally, like a lot of markets, and we see this in the dozen markets we're in around the country, delivering space typically is like a step function, right? It takes 3 years to design and build, and then it gets delivered. And we need to smooth that out so that we're not all waiting for the space to get delivered in 3 years, but that there's a more dynamic, more regular absorption of space. And I think that's one of the things I thought was interesting in the earlier panel, talking a little bit about Boston and some other markets. And I think one of the interesting things I've seen in Boston that's, I think, starting to differentiate Philadelphia is of the, 6 million square feet of space in labs that they've delivered in the last few years, 80% of that has been leased in 12 months or less from occupancy. Right, so there's not this notion that we're going to wait 3 years. We're going to deliver space and you're going to be in it. Like, who wants to sign a lease and wait around for 3 years, right? And I think that that's where we are in University City now. We can meet those kind of turnaround times. We have product available up and down the street, and I think more broadly in the market, having that kind of responsiveness as well.
Thank you. Anthony.
Sure. It's always nice following John and U City Square because it is the center of the innovation ecosystem. And we're 3 blocks west of what's happening there. So I have the fortune to kind of not create a new playbook, but look at their playbook and say, how do we tweak it and make it fit a vertical ecosystem? So a lot of time I spent over the last 18 months now, we're again 6 months away from delivery, is looking at the floor plans, looking at the program of the building, and how do you create a vertical ecosystem? What's needed in the market? Can't just be the buzzword of an incubator or step-up space or graduate space. How do you reinvent your amenities so when companies grow, they can grow into the next building efficiently? We've been blessed with having great teams around us. We have the Newmark team that's representing us right now that's helping us think through even spec suites. But all that comes full circle, and that last panel and the panel before that, which I love, talking incubation and obviously acceleration programming, because that's really where you get your hands dirty. But when you think about what's needed in your building, that's where it really starts to yield an ROI. And we're fortunate to have great partners in Silverstein Properties out of New York and Cantor Fitzgerald that allow us to not only be our LP, but to think about our long-term, our campus, and what that means for University City and for the region. So 6 months from now, we'll have our ribbon cutting. We have active proposals on every floor. Those proposals have hair on them. It's hair like waiting to raise $25 million round. It's hair like their credit's not there, and how do you underwrite that? And again, I think the creativity in this time and day isn't just to wait till the market corrects itself. It's looking at the resources you have and saying, well, I need a scientific advisory team. Let me call Wistar, who early on were great friends of UPA. Let me call Ben Franklin Technology Partners, who can help me with the due diligence package to make the case. And let me also decouple my LP, who happens to be an global investment bank, Cantor Fitzgerald, to say, hey, maybe come alongside them to make that 25 look like 10 million. And how do we syndicate and leverage our network? So these next 6 months are so critical for UPA, but I'm excited because we have the right team around us to get creative in this market right now.
Absolutely. Thank you. Louis.
Yeah, so the Pennsylvania Biotechnology Center is located in the thriving metropolis of Doylestown, Pennsylvania. We are very blessed with the location. We're in the heart of the Pharma Belt. So within 2 hours of Doylestown is about 70 to 80% of all pharma. And that has had a significant impact. I mean, we have 8 FDA drug makers on site. We have companies from Princeton, we have companies from Penn. So it's a very unique situation. We just opened up a 37,000 square foot building. That's at full capacity. That was a few months ago. We've been very fortunate that we've been at full capacity for close to 8 years now. And the model itself really leads to, and what makes us different, most incubators on average move companies out within 2 to 3 years. We don't kick companies out at PA Biotech Center. We believe that it's part of our ecosystem, and the senior companies actually give back to the younger companies. They mentor them. At some point when they go IPO, we've had 5 or 6 IPOs, they'll move out of the building. But that's a big part of our model, is having that senior helping out the freshmen coming in. So much so that we wanted to replicate the model, and just to talk a little bit about B Labs, location. It's right next to the 30th Street Station. It's in a beautiful building, the Sierra Center. It's 50,000 square feet. We're on the second, third, and fourth floor. What's very unique about the project with Brandywine is we can graduate. You could start with a bench at B Labs, a single bench. We have floors 5 through 9, which are being built out right now for graduate space or intermediate space. I think we probably need to define what's intermediate space versus graduate, because in my experience, intermediate could be that 3,000 to 7,000 square foot. I mean, you are graduating out of the incubator, but I've seen companies that go IPO that need that 40,000 square foot building, that 100,000 square foot building. So at B Labs, it's unique. You could start, you can move all the way through, and then of course, Brandywine and Schuylkill Yards is building more lab space. So you can go from bench to commercialization and keep your whole workforce right in one spot. So.
Thank you. That is certainly an advantage. Jamie.
So it was at the end of 2019, our first tenant at Curtis Invax opened up their R&D lab, and a couple of months later, our largest tenant left, and then COVID hit. And we kind of said, oh no, like this isn't good. But seeing that lab kind of, spurred the thought process, and we were, it was discussed earlier about all the buildings that we're looking to convert and doing studies. So we were one of those buildings, and we realized that we really had something special at the building. So. About 18 months ago, we kind of started on, a full blitz, marketing of the building for life science tenants. Since then, we've added another 5, so we're at about 130,000 square feet of deals signed over the last 12 to 18 months, including Invax has grown. They built out their GMP suites in the building. A couple other startup companies, a couple groups that have raised a Series A. And we actually just closed the largest financing in the history of the company at $265 million, so which is all for future conversion, converting additional space in the building to lab. So we're looking at doing another couple 100,000 square feet, but really it's been exciting. It's kind of outweighed our expectations. In terms of kind of what differentiates us, it's a 1 million square foot historic building. So, I think a lot of people thought we were crazy when we started the process, and, we probably thought we were crazy too, but it's worked out. It's a beautiful building. The location, kind of right on Independence Hall in Washington Square, I think sets us apart too. It's kind of suburbs within the city, which is really nice. It's walkable, and I think lastly, which has been a huge blessing for us, and you heard from Melina from Biolabs earlier, but they took space in our building. They kind of took over the graduate suites that we have built out, and they've really just kind of taken the ecosystem from 1 to 10, because that was our goal all along when we started the conversion, was create a place where companies could kind of grow together, and we have these huge floor plates, and so Melina and her team have just been really kind of the leaders in getting the tenants together and creating this kind of dynamic ecosystem. And so again, we've talked about having a bench. We have a unique building where you can kind of come into Melina's space and have 1 bench, 2 benches, grow into their graduate suites, grow into the building, and then in some cases you could potentially do manufacturing in the building too. So it's a really unique asset, and we're very excited.
Thank you for sharing. And Nelson.
Thanks, Jennifer. So I want to provide a little bit of context before I get into it a little bit with regard to our place at the Navy Yard. In 2021, Ensemble Real Estate Investments, a West Coast-based development firm, and Mosaic Development Partners, a local minority-owned development company, finalized its agreement with PIDC for essentially what's the remaining developable land at the Navy Yard, which represents about 109 acres. So that was roughly February, March of 2021. Fast forward to February 2022, we finalize our equity agreement with an $80 billion Canadian pension fund. We break ground on a 4-story, 140,000 square foot R&D lab building. Speculatively, I might add, the first speculative lab building at the Navy Yard, which is under construction and will be delivered in April of 2023. And in the next 6 months or so, we're going to be in the ground on development, which will include 611 residential units. Directly across the street from that, we'll begin the adaptive reuse of an old Navy building into a 223-key full-service luxury hotel. In addition to those 3 projects, we have a parking structure coming out of the ground. So all of these buildings will park on the free available street parking at the Navy Yard, in addition to the 671 spaces in this new garage. On the ground level, what you'll find is we're providing 50,000 square feet of retail space that's pedestrian facing. So essentially, when you look at this first phase of development, encapsulating about $500 million in total, what we're doing is we're densifying the Navy Yard, and we're creating a new downtown area, which will serve to benefit not just the folks that already work in the Navy Yard. It will benefit the future residents, and it will provide a place for people to come who have no other reason for being at the Navy Yard. So again, that's phase 1, and we've already begun planning the first building as part of phase 2, which will introduce a new area of the Navy Yard known as the Waterfront District, and we already have plans underway for that facility. But I think if we're talking about what really differentiates the Navy Yard from some of the other projects, you have to remember that this is a 1,200-acre site. It's massive. There's already an existing ecosystem and community of about 15,000 employees spread out over 150 companies, ranging from corporate offices to life science, cell and gene therapy, research and development, and otherwise. So we have this existing community, and when you think about the Navy Yard, it's like we'll always have space, we'll always have product. It's a massive site, but you know, a lot of the development that has come from the life science sector has been in the form of build-to-suits. But what we will be offering going forward are speculative buildings in addition to those build-to-suits. We're able to offer a speed to market as a competitive advantage, which helps these companies get up and running faster. So if you think about the buildings that we're developing, they're typically smaller in size and scale. They're in a horizontal configuration, and from start to finish, it takes about 24 months to build, which is pretty incredible in this environment. So, you know, we often we're seeing for the first time at the Navy Yard some very, very large GMP requirements. We can accommodate up over 1 million square feet at the Navy Yard, in addition to some of these other smaller projects, which we will build speculatively.
Thank you, Nelson. So at this time, I'd like to start with Q&A, if there's any questions from the audience. If there is not questions from the audience, I do have a few prepared questions for the panel. Louie, if
We
you
have
could
one.
please... Oh, sorry.
Just making my way to the back.
Oh, sure.
Hi, everyone. Megan Kelly with Hillco Redevelopment Partners. I know many of you. It's great to see you and hear from you today. Travis McCready from the previous panel mentioned early in his remarks that Philadelphia needs to better understand demand trends. They didn't really get into that in that panel, but I think that question is very pertinent to this panel, actually. All of you are responsible for adding to Philadelphia's, or Greater Philadelphia's, supply, which is great and what we've needed for years. But the question is, how are you anticipating the demand curve now that all of the supply is coming online?
Happy to take a crack at it. I think demand has a couple components, right, that I think we're all paying attention to. One is the generation of demand coming out of basic science, being translated and commercialized, and I think in this market, we've actually done a really good job of supporting that whole process. 10 years ago, and I'm not sure we did such a great job, we saw lots of people kind of disappear when they reached a certain scale. And I think between the support of our universities and academic health centers, the development community, the capital community, we see a lot of success of companies. Spark Therapeutics, obviously, right? Great example of someone that started here, grew here, and has been successful here in a relatively short time. So I think we need to tend to that end of the demand, right? We need to continue to focus on the importance of our competitive advantage as a market around talent and around basic science. We need to support our universities and our research community and continuing to grow. And then for me, the second thing is I think we need to complement that success by digging more deeply and building a deeper demand pool by attracting people from outside the region to put their toe into the Philadelphia water. We've got some really nice success stories of that with people like Environs at the Navy Yard, with Amicus Therapeutics, people that have come into the market, Amicus moved their headquarters here, Environs brought a whole function here. But we need to promote those aspects of our industry and our ecosystem so that when we have Eli Lilly's a great tenant of ours in University City, and when their folks tell me they just signed a 300,000 square foot lease in the Seaport District to focus on cell therapy and mRNA technologies, I want them to look in Philadelphia when they do that, right? So I think that's where we can deepen demand and build a deeper pipeline for everybody.
I'd like to just follow up to that answer, John. I agree with John. You know, being one of the older guys up here, you know, it seems that Philadelphia is now really on the not only national map, but the international map. And folks like Wexford and others know that. And we've discovered that, you know, in King of Prussia because we have scale. And with technology, you know, you can network around the world. And so now that Philadelphia has the attention globally, I think collectively, both private and the public entities need to collaborate to make our offering more competitive around the U.S. and around the world. Because I think the demand is there because, you know, science discovery and FDA approvals are still there. The growth is still there. There's still funding for saving lives and advanced therapies. And so therefore there's still demand. But they can choose between San Diego and Boston and Ireland. And I think we need to Pennsylvania and the city and surrounding region needs to form a more aggressive collaboration. That's my thought on demand.
If I could follow up with that, Joe, and I agree with what you and John said. I said earlier, 43% of the companies at B Labs are from outside the Philadelphia area. In Doylestown, we're seeing companies from San Francisco, from Boston, from New York, Seattle. And what I'm hearing from the CEOs is it's the affordability. When you talk about, and from the previous panel, you know, what are some of our strengths? We have the affordability. We have the talent, going to Joe's point. We're 4th in NIH funding, 5th in patents. And we have some of the best universities on this corner of the state and the other corner of the state. So I think that's really important for us to as you said, market. And then I think the real thing that would push us over the edge is getting the state to buy into, and I see Claire Greenwood over there from the chamber, and I don't want to step on her panel too much, but you know, we got to come up with investment, incentives, recruitment, workforce development. We've got to make it a joint effort. There's a big enough pie for every single one of us up here and everyone in the crowd that we can put Philadelphia and get over that tipping point. So when you look at what other states have done, and you know, the moonshot that Massachusetts did with that $1 billion investment, can you imagine if we had something like that here in Pennsylvania? That will really help push us and give us the acceleration we need to progress. Thanks.
I love it. I'm just going to piggyback real quick, just kind of go a little bit different direction. Think about the names. You got Longfellow now in Philadelphia. You got Baupost. You got Sterling Bay. You got Silverstein and Cantor Fitzgerald. How do we get more creative? Look at what Alexandria is doing in New York as far as saying, yeah, we own a building, we're programming a building, but we're also going to make an investment into the company. You know, I remember being on the panel 2 years ago, hearing about spec development not happening in Philadelphia, and then John, your squad went spec, we went spec, and you're seeing this kind of demand now of space coming online. I think the next real iteration will be, can you look at that capital stack and turn it upside down on its head, not only just for the benefit of these companies, but for the benefit of the community. We talked about workforce development, we talked about the needs in the community to get people onto the floor, you talked about reinventing the amenities inside your building. I can't wait till that conversation comes to light, because that's where you really start to shine. And that's why groups like Alexandria are lucrative when you're talking about these executives that are doing whatever it takes, and they're thinking about top-down approach. Because I have their LOIs, and their LOIs have a contingency for $25 to $50 million, and they'll do whatever it takes to get that fundraise. But we can't just sit by as developers and owners now. How creative could we get in this next cycle? And I think that'll really add more light to what Philly's doing, because we have the DNA of collaboration. I mean, I can tell you there's conversations on this panel that happened. You got leaders like Claire that will talk a little bit about a unified narrative. I think it's time to even push the envelope on the capital stack side. And I think when you have land in prime locations, you can dictate things a little differently.
Yes.
Hi, my name's Kate McDonough. I'm with Nancy Kelly and Associates. Thank you, each of you. My question is actually a regurgitation of an earlier question. Where is pharma today? This is a sold-out event with the top life science communities in Philadelphia. Each of you have close connections. Eli Lilly, Roche, where are they, and how can we get them more engaged?
We have some pharma next to me here, but I'll take a quick stab. Most of the CEOs of pharma are living in Pennsylvania. I know that because up in my area of Bucks County and Upper Makefield and New Hope and Buckingham, you've had the Alex Gorskys, the Kent Frazier's, on our board. We've had EVPs from Merck and CEOs of Novartis. I think, talking about how we can do it, we need to reach out to the leadership, I believe, because I think it starts at the top, and let them know they're Pennsylvanians. What can they do to help bridge this? Because you're right, and Vlad, I want to thank you for bringing that point up. There is a major absence here today, and how are we going to bridge that? And I think it would start with talking to people high up, decision makers, to try to make that bridge.
Yeah, I mean, I'll speak on behalf of Roche. Spark did not invest $600 million in Philadelphia. Roche invested $600 million in Philadelphia. So let's be clear about that. And, I mentioned in my talk before that Roche has they also are doing cell and gene therapy R&D across the ocean. But their intent is any products that are commercialized will come here to Philadelphia, to my building, to be manufactured commercially. So I would say from the perspective of Roche, Big Pharma is here in Philadelphia in the guise of Spark Therapeutics. But we are very unique in that regard. So I came out of Merck, and Merck has no gene therapy business at all, nor any intention of going there. And yet they were in DNA vaccines 15 years ago, and we're really cutting edge. So I do wonder where Big Pharma is.
Well, my perspective on Big Pharma, obviously, is that they've changed their model from in-house R&D, which is why they consolidated in King of Prussia, GSK did, and we acquired a 1 million square foot former R&D headquarters campus. So that's an opportunity for folks in the real estate business on the acquisition side. With respect to where they are, I think their model is they're letting scientists advance therapies early on the clinical stage, and then when they get promise, they're making acquisitions, and then those folks are looking for space. And I think to accommodate that from a real estate standpoint, you have to be innovative. And I think the credit I'll give our founder Brian O'Neill is that we created a hybrid model for that change in the business. And the hybrid model is that you need to create research and development and manufacturing space at scale in a timely manner. And how do you do that? And one of the ways we're accomplishing that, besides acquiring existing infrastructure, which we did, but was to actually create our own manufacturing and own R&D and our own QC testing and product development and asset development testing for clients so that when they come to us, no matter what stage they're in, we can take them from the clinical stage with our CDMO all the way through to an independent, newly developed building, and they can be in our CDMO while we're designing and building that complex. And so I think, Big Pharma has changed, and so therefore the supply side has to change how we address the way the landscape of research and development and manufacturing has become.
Yeah, and I agree with all that. And I think three things. One is, although Big Pharma has traditionally been in the suburbs, not in the city, I think there's three things we're seeing that are changing that quickly. One is talent, right? The C-level talent that are leading the companies that are raising money in cell and gene therapy are all led by men and women who spent 30 years at Big Pharma, and they're now leading these companies. So the talent pipeline that Big Pharma has developed and facilitated and cultivated over the last several decades is a huge connection point. Second is the universities and Big Pharma are doing more and more together. Right? In our market, our universities 10, 15, 20 years ago were not as engaged with Big Pharma around research. Joe said some of that's Big Pharma wanting to change their model, some of it is the universities changing their model, right? But that is starting to come together. And then we're starting to see more and more Big Pharma kind of put their toe in the water and say we need to, we're not going to move our corporate headquarters, but let's put a front door into University City. CSL Behring just opened a 20-bench lab in the CIC space in our 3675 building. They want to get access. They want people to see them. They want visibility. They want access to talent. They want to walk across the street and talk to Jim Wilson or to someone at Penn. So I think those three things are bringing Big Pharma and biotech and the city and universities even more and more together.
And I would just like to add, when you think about all of our projects, be it in the city, at the Navy Yard, in the suburbs, the access that we have within this region is pretty incredible. We're all minutes from the airport. We're minutes from, we're either in or minutes from Center City, University City, from South Jersey and everything that's happening on that side of the river. So to say that there's no activity from Big Pharma, I don't think is necessarily the case. From my chair where I'm sitting, I mentioned how we're in the midst of completing phase 1 at the Navy Yard. We'll move into phase 2. But the last piece of it is a massive site that can accommodate these 1 million square foot plus Big Pharma requirements, which we have seen several of over the last year, 18 months. They're out there. They're kicking tires. If they're doing that, they're looking in Philly. But I mean, as we all know, we have an abundance of talent and expertise in Philadelphia. So it's up to us collectively to work together to figure out how do we get them in. We've got the incubation, we've got the graduate spaces. How do we move them through that process into commercialization, to manufacturing, into these Big Pharma roles, and how do we keep all of that here in Philly?
Steve Marr with Spark. I said at the table here, tongue-in-cheek, when you said we're a couple minutes from the airport. I would probably say you're a couple miles from the airport, but that might not be a couple minutes, which is really the center of my question. I see as stats that we're building 3.5 million square foot of development in University City right now. Spark's just took over F lot. That's 250 parking spots that aren't there anymore. So my question has to do with infrastructure. What are you all doing to get the state and local governments to fix their infrastructure to support this development? Because we're going to end up choking ourselves off if we don't fix the infrastructure as part of this.
I think that for me, Steve, the biggest piece of infrastructure around that, at least right now, is about mass transit. I think mobility of the workforce is an asset for us, and we have to get back to a point where people can move around the region in a seamless, easy, direct, and safe way. And I think we're doing that as employers, encouraging more people to ride transit, particularly in life sciences. I see a lot of our tenants offering their employees the septic key cards, trying to get more people back on transit. But I agree. I think there's a bully pulpit out there where we need to have a much, much bigger focus, not only on getting transit back, but how do we increase the number of trains running on regional rail, right? We can't, why do you have to wait an hour for a train? Like, it's ridiculous. So for me, that's number one, front and center, something that we're doing some things in, and I think we need to do more.
I'll piggyback that on just a real 41st Market feeling, Steve. When you think about infrastructure, big picture, no one better than John to talk big picture as a former PIDC chief. But small picture is, I got trash on the ground at 40th and Market where people are coming in. So how do we uptick and put pressure on the leadership, the city leadership, to say we need to clean up the city. We need to make sure it's safe and people feel safe in the city. And that's just the power of the vote and making sure that people can hear you. And that's part of the responsibility of a developer these days, to actually say we need smarter people in position to fix these problems, because it does affect. I've lost hundreds of thousands of square feet of proposals because you look at what happens at 40th and Market, and that's changing, and it's going to change. But again, we're not just sitting back and waiting for it to change. I think leadership needs to make sure they double down on those services. And not only on that, the school district is also an effect. Look at our school district. It's a shame when you see this inflection point, white hot market, and we're still not doubling down with our school district the way we could, because that affects the neighborhoods and the communities in which all these industries are going to thrive. So there's a whole community development narrative that I think Philly is baked to be the national leader around community development, because it's, again, in our DNA.
And thank you very much for all of your participation and your excellent questions. This brings us to the end of our panel. This has been incredibly informative. Thank you for providing your expert insights, updates on your projects, what makes them unique and differentiated. And really right now we're in a place where the ecosystem is changing. It's dynamic. There's so many different opportunities. Like you said, the pie is certainly large enough for everyone in this room and beyond on the stage to really make a significant difference in the lives of patients who need the therapies that we're all working on. So thank you again for your participation, and we look forward to watching all of your projects evolve over time.